back to another episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about this. We're going to be talking about quite a few things because you guys know that on my podcast, I flow, we relax, we vibe, we talk, we chat. It's what we do, and we do it well, right? We converse, we share ideas, and so forth. So first and foremost, I want to thank everyone for listening. You guys know that this podcast has kind of been back and forth. I've did a lot of rebranding. I can definitely say as I'm getting older, as I'm getting more confident in my work, it's definitely one of those things to where it's like, yeah, we're going to just stay put. We're going to flow, and this is going to work, and this is going to be great. So I look forward to that. But I wanted to talk about this thing that's kind of going on right now, which is really called projection. And this was something that they talked about in regards to like racial projection. And this was something that was in the Hidden Colors. And it just essentially talked about how it's kind of what's happening today, right? A lot of white people are posing the question of whether or not Black people are racist. And I found this to be very interesting because people don't understand that when it comes to racism, to be racist is to believe that you are superior to others, right? There is nobody who really possesses that belief like white people, because it's something that has been deeply ingrained in their mind. So I've been doing a lot of research here lately to try to find some books and really gather some content for white psychology. I was able to find one book. I look forward to purchasing that today, reading that, because it's just something that it's never explored. And the reason why it's never explored, the reason why it's never, really kind of looked at in a very critical lens for mere curiosity is because of white supremacy, right? When you're the one who controls all the things, you're the one who says what we are allowed to talk about, what goes, right? And you're never questioned, right? That's like when we talk about malpractice and we talk about killing the Black body and we talk about medical apartheid. We realized that these experiments, just here recently, right? Cincinnati had the Cincinnati radiation experiment, right? So it's just like white people are never questioned for their malpractice, for the things that have gone on in the medical realm, right? The white woman who did she kill like seven babies out in the UK? She was a neonatal nurse, and she was literally killing babies. So it's just like, it's one of those things in which we have to be so careful when we kind of toe this line or even adopt this idea and kind of start to entertain it. Like, you have to realize that no, Black people cannot be racist. Black people are not taught. It is not instilled in a Black person that you are superior to others, right? You may struggle with certain things within the community, right? We may have some ego trips going on over here, but it's never Black people feeling as though they're superior to white people. That doesn't exist. And so what happens with a projection is that you start to think that people think like you do. You start to think that, oh, this Black person is racist because they're not protecting my white fragility. They're calling me out on certain things, or they're sticking up for themselves, right? Commanding that they be treated with respect and like a human being. You start to project and say, oh, this person is racist because you yourself possess these ideologies that you are superior to another person. I think another thing too that I found to be very interesting, and I kind of talked about this in the last episode. Actually, I think I deleted it. Oh my gosh, you guys. Listen, it is an uphill battle when you're speaking the truth. You know, it's one of those things in which you feel very liberated when you're able to get it across as clear and concise. It's one of those things where you do need a considerable amount of courage because we live in a world now where there's a lot of passivity. We live in a world now where there's a lot of nullifying of the truth and really kind of like manipulating the truth and stripping away the truth in the ways in which, you know, it just kind of can pierce you. You know, we really go above and beyond to keep certain things intact, to keep certain people intact. And I also think we're also on the extreme as well, where, you know, for a lot of people, when it comes to, you know, being on the internet, having a platform, there's this lack of responsibility. And there's just really this overt disregard and violence that is oftentimes projected onto others and instilled in others. And we see that with, you know, this manosphere and, you know, certain podcast episodes where there was really this disregard and disrespect for women. And so it's kind of the same. I've noticed that there's actually quite a few conservative channels that actually are run by Black people who have white partners, and they're really radical in their beliefs and their ideologies and disdains in regards to Black people. So it's very interesting. I can honestly say for myself, having traveled I came back, I was so saddened. I was so saddened, not because I was home, not because, I wanted my vacation to last a little bit longer. One, you never realize, like, sometimes you really do just need a vacation. But I was saddened because I had never realized how bad it was for me growing up, right? I had never realized the extremity of deprivation, right? The lack of nourishment, right? The lack of resources, the lack of diversity, the discrimination. I had never realized how bad it was until I traveled. And last night I went to the concert. I went to a Daniel Caesar concert. And it was very interesting because, it was very interesting, I found, because the white people in there were just so ranting and raving with Daniel Caesar. But as I was walking around, trying to find my place, because I paid for floor seats, which I was so taken back by this stadium. Nonetheless, I'm walking around, trying to find me, a seat. It was just me. I was trying to find somewhere to kind of propped up. And I just kind of noticed the aggression that a lot of the white people had for me as I was kind of like moving through, the attitudes. I started to notice too, a lot of people in that crowd who listen kind of to that indie artist, they're not healthy. And this is kind of like a sidebar. When I say not healthy, I mean, like, I noticed that these people are typically people who don't bathe. I mean, everyone smelled really bad. It wasn't a matter of like, oh, it's hot. It was more so like my concern for the youth and their drug use and their just disregard for personal hygiene, and I'm not sure if it's one of those things in which it's not being taught. We know that in a lot of schools, public schools specifically, health education has been removed from the curriculum. I think that's another really, really alarming thing, right? There's not a lot of conversation around sex ed. There's not a lot of conversation around personal hygiene and things like that. So that's something that really kind of raised a concern for me. But also, again, the heavy drug use, right? It's kind of like this attitude of like, whatever. And again, I'm older, so I understand that like we all have our phases, right, through the childhood development and adolescent years. So nonetheless, I was leaving and the white woman was just very rude to me, and I was just so taken back because the way that I carry myself, the way that I present myself, it's a very respectable way. I don't really deal with a lot of chaos, quite frankly, because I know for me, it's like I carry myself in such a way that I show up to avoid a lot of that because I'm aware of certain negative stigmas. But I'm also the type of person to where for me, it's like I enjoy looking a certain type of way. I love fashion. I'm always very much well kept. So to be met with like disdain and disrespect and disregard, it's just one of those things where it's like it's probably one of the most emotionally distressing experiences. And it really just kind of says a lot because I'm in this concert, I'm seeing all these black guys with these white women, and I was just talking to my coworker about this. Actually, no, I wasn't talking to my coworker. I was talking to a relative about this, and it's this truth that is white women have a huge disdain and disregard for black women, but there's a fetishization of black men. And it saddens me because so many black men really fall into this pit of despair and this pit of manipulation. I was at work and there was this white woman who sat next to me. I wrote about this in the column. She was sitting next to me and I heard her on the, we were at work. She's on the phone with a client and she's like, yeah, oh my God, you live in the hood. You need to get a stun gun and you need to get, X, Y, and Z. And in a moment, it just really took me back because I'm like, that was such an inappropriate thing to say. And I was so impressed by how she was able to say that so comfortably, and how she really carried on with the conversation. I'm sure there was another white person on the line as well. And they really carried on with this conversation and this disrespect, this really blatant disrespect and disregard. I really thought that said a lot. And this is one of those things that this is why I critique so many of these modern movements because they're so fake. You know what I mean? It's so fabricated and it's woven, idea, that's really easily digestible for the youth. And it makes them believe that we live in this really perfect and safe world where everyone has equal opportunities. And it's not true. But the comment really threw me for a loop because I'm like, I think I found that very interesting for her to say that. And we live in this culture where technology is easily accessible to everyone. And it's very obvious that black people have been murdered. Innocent blood is continuously being shed at the hands of white people. So to make a comment that you need to armor up as a white person in the hood, in which, white people are clearly gentrifying and making it a lot more palatable and comfortable and, for them. And we know that there's never really been any attacks on white people in Black communities. So, I just found it to just be such an ignorant thing to say. And we know, again, you guys, trust me, I get it. We know that most white people who are racist are ignorant. I was actually listening to this J. Cole song, Come Through and Chill. I think, who was that with? Is that with Wale? Is that with Raheem? I said Raheem. Miguel. It's with Miguel. He just said, manipulating poor white folks because they're ignorant. And I talk about this all the time, right? Like, once you start to educate yourself, you critique the systems. But for me, leaving and coming back made me realize how racist this state was and how many racist people lived among me and how ignorant the white people were around me. So that was really unfortunate. But I'm saying that, bringing it full circle, to just say I found that to be very interesting for her to make such a bold statement. And I noticed that there was this Black guy who worked with us, right? He comes over, she's super giddy, super palatable, you know what I mean? All these different things, like very flirtatious. And I think that this is really the danger, and this is my concern. I talked about this of, whether or not Black men were actually being abused in interracial relationships, right? Were they being financially abused? Were they being emotionally abused? Because there's really something malignant in the white psychology that really is a disdain and a perpetual venomous hatred towards Black people. And because of the ignorance and because of the sociological wiring and educational systems, it's going to be really hard to unlearn that. And this is why I critique white psychology, and I get so frustrated when we talk about Blackness and Black culture and how so many white people want to be the cause and the cure to Black communal problems, is because you're so busy trying to rework and underwire and feel heroic in Black communities, when you have to realize that you need to take a look in the mirror and realize your own stuff, right? It's one of those things to where it's like, in all the same ways in which slavery has impacted Black people, it's 100% impacted white people, 100%. And that's going to be really hard to undo. So that's why when we have conversations about the ways in which, Black people are being treated, and it's completely irrefutable, right? The evidence surmounts, and it's historical, right? At this point, it's very linear. It really doesn't take a rocket science to see it. It doesn't take a degree to see it. It doesn't take a PhD to find the research and the information. It's nothing more than a projection. When a white person comes back, or a Black conservative, comes back and they start to make claims that Black people are being racist. I also think it's very important to understand the detriments and the psychological implications on a Black person being bullied for being an intellectual. We have to address this. We have to literally talk about the trauma, the pain that a Black person carries that makes them go far radical in regards to conservatism, parlaying with white people who are blatantly racist, and their willingness to defy and neglect and dismantle the plight of equality in the Black community because of their own pain and trauma from the bullying. We have to address this. We also have to realize that for so many people who come online, a lot of the things that they do are merely survival tactics. You have to understand, for some people, depending on where they come from, depending on where they live, depending on which, hands were dealt to them, some people really go into extremes because poverty is traumatic. It's traumatic. It's miserable, it's traumatic, and it's really, really hard pressed. And when you grow up and you're bullied by the Black community and you find community and haven and respect in regards to your intelligence in white communities, it's going to be very easy for you to kind of adapt and adjust and move onward and upward, especially when you don't have that community backing you and helping you get through it, right? So at this point, you're kind of like thrown to the wolves. And at this point, you kind of have to decide whether or not you're going to sink or drown, or sink or swim. And for so many people, if you are in these spaces, then it happens very early for you, especially post modern times, right? I don't think people realize it, but there was not always a space for Black people to have a voice. I met with the senator one time and I asked her, I said, these are the conversations that need to be had. And she said, we were never able to have these conversations. Our generation, Gen Z specifically, it's very courageous. And because we are all on the same page in regards to garnering that sense of equality, even though, right, in some areas, it's kind of lost on us because of the multicultural movements that really kind of have a way of siloing our struggles and hijacking our plight. We're really doing a lot of progressive stuff here. You know what I mean? Like these conversations are definitely things in which we're not always had. You know, it was not always okay to talk about racism. You know, for a lot of people, it was definitely one of those things where it's like you just shut up and you keep it pushing. I remember I met with a man who was a lawyer. He was an attorney, extremely smart and sophisticated individual. And he was starting a business. And he told me that, you know, once he got out of law school, he was applying for jobs and things like that. And he did not get offered a position. And I found that to be very disheartening. And I knew on a very subtle level, you know, his name might have been something that was alarming. And it's not because his name was anything, you know, but it was just a simple fact that his name was a Black identifier. So I think when we obviously overturn things like affirmative action, I think when we come out and we try to make these very progressive claims, I think when you live in a very progressive and diverse state, such as like California, you're really blind to the struggles of Black people and the communities of deprivation. You're really blind to the lack of resources. You're really blind to the lack of nutrition, right? We all know that when you don't feel good, it's going to be really hard to, like, you know what I mean? And I think as much as we try, you know, Michelle Obama was really good for this. I think that she was trying to, well, she did implement, you know, better nutrition in schools and things like that. But you have to understand who's cooking it, right? The spirit behind it, right? And then, you know, you start to look at the ways in which it's presented. You know what I mean? Yeah, you can give kids oranges, but if the oranges are all beat up, you know, you know what I mean? Like, a child more than likely is not going to eat that. Versus if a child can walk into a supermarket and grab some oranges that are already cut up, sliced and diced, ready for lunch. And this is something that is readily available on every corner store. You see what I'm saying? So there's this proximity that also really plays a huge role in whether or not a person is going to eat healthy, you know? So I just think that one thing I realize is that when it comes to your freedom, equality, happiness, it's such a long fight and you really have to fight for it. And we just don't live in that kind of world. And so, yeah, man, I touched on quite a few things in this podcast episode, kind of all over the place. I hope you're still following. I hope you're still listening. I think I'm going to just end here because, again, I was just more so coming on to share my observations. I'm still writing. I'm still a little tired, which is kind of obvious. But, yeah, just know that I see you. Just know that I feel you. I see you. And just know that, like, you're not alone. You know, like, I think that it's really something said about the value of popularity and really the underlying desire for popularity and fame is not necessarily to be an entertainer, or it's not necessarily to, you know, just completely screw all things like education. I think in large, you know, the valuing of popularity is the desire to feel seen. You know, because that's something that just really doesn't exist. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, you know, you've been a Black kid, you know, playing soccer, a little Black girl, a little Black boy on your team. If you're, you know, your mother or your parents moved you out to a suburbia neighborhood or whatever, and you're just not seen. You know, you literally feel as though you don't even exist, you know, and it doesn't always have to be, you know, living in suburbia, living in white communities. Sometimes it's like that in public schools. Sometimes it's like that in local communities that, you know what I mean, do kind of have that intertwining of urbanness, so to speak. But yeah, it's like, you know, you're in a room, you're the only Black person and you're not seen. You kind of have to keep your head down. You can't relate to the jokes. If you try to make a comment on something, you know, people aren't really seeing you. If you're at work and you have white people trying you, you know what I mean, because of their own ignorance, their own lack of intelligence, their own lack of integrity, right? Saying things like, oh, if you grow, you know, you're in the hood, you need to bring a gun, you know what I mean? Like, and it's really emotional, distressing. And I talked about this in the column, just why there's a liquor store on every corner. You know what I mean? It's really to kind of nullify the pain that is racial trauma, and it persists. You know what I mean? It absolutely persists. I mean, literally last night at the concert, the way that she's younger than me, you know what I mean? Talking to me, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just like, it's disgusting. And she was absolutely wrong with about the information she was providing me anyway. So she had no business, you know what I mean? And then it's like, when you realize that, okay, this person is just being racist. This person is just simply, because here's the thing, racism, understand that to be a racist means to think that you are superior. So when you're talking down to a person, when you're, going above and beyond to kind of assert yourself above this person, that is being racist. That's racism. And I think for me personally, I have absolutely no desire to educate a white person in regards to racism. I'm not that friend. I'm not that person, and I never will be. If I have to educate you about racism, this already lets me know me and you will never get along. I will never be your friend. I can never be your friend. You know what I mean? And it just would never work. And so I think that the reality is that you don't have to pander to Black people if you are a white person, and nobody's asking you to come and fix what, years and years of your ancestors have done. Nobody's asking you for that. But one thing I will say for Black people, stop trying to bear the brunt of the spiritual recompense in regards to racism and slavery in the lives of white people and your white friends. Right. And what I mean by that is like, stop trying to be the comfort. Stop trying to aid in the white fragility by trying to nullify the demoralization that white people may feel, from being racist. You know what I mean? Like, please stop trying to aid in that. White people have the privilege of not really experiencing a lot of discomfort. They have the privilege of getting whatever it is that they want, right? They say, hey, you're teaching African-American literature. I'm taking this to the mirror. We're having a town hall meeting, book banning. You see what I'm saying? That is powerful. So I think when you start trying to make white people feel comfortable or educating them or whatever the case may be, you're really doing a disservice. You're doing a disservice. You need to step off, okay? Let God have God's way and let it be God's judgment and let the spiritual do what the spiritual will do, okay? And you need to stand down. And I think, having these conversations, you have to understand, I got to a point because it took a while for me to get here, in regards to how I felt about educating Black people in regards to racism. I was really trying to toe the line. I think everybody knows when you come out, you're kind of seen as this freedom fighter. And, we know that can have a lot of negative implications, especially in the modern world, in a modern society. Nobody's really, we're not really there. But, I was really back and forth. And for a very long time, I didn't know how I was going to present myself, how I was going to present the literature, how I was going to present what it is that I knew, because I was always trying to be mindful of my delivery. And I'll still, be accountable in my delivery, and I'll still be responsible for the things that I say. But I set my intentions solely on educating Black people. That has freed me from a lot of that back and forth and a lot of the prioritization of white fragility. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. I'm getting ready to make me some breakfast, relax, have a cool day, have a chill morning. I need to go for a run. August is here. Autumn is here. Blessings are here. God is near. God is dear. And God loves you. And I see you. And, I want you to go out and have a good day. I want you to go out and have a good day. And I want you to, start documenting to yourself, right? Journaling, podcasting, writing. I need you to find a healthy outlet to express your emotional distress in regards to your racial trauma. If you can't talk to the people about it around you, go to therapy. If you can't go to therapy, write about it, journal about it. I have a friend who is really dealing with that heavily. And it's unfortunate because he doesn't have the tools and the awareness, to realize that it's not a matter of having a conversation with your managers, right? It's not a matter of talking to the company and it's a matter of racism, right? And it's a matter of them esteeming you lesser than them and them feeling as though they can treat you any kind of way, them going above and beyond, right? It's this collective approach that white people take to get Black people out of position and out of spaces, right? And it's the discomfort, it's the bullying, it's the isolating, it's the, it's all of that. It's the lack of pay. You know what I mean? White people will really go above and beyond. And so it's unfortunate because, like I said, when we talk about white psychology, these are the things that white people will never say. And I can honestly say I do admire that about white culture, is that they can be very racist, very nasty, and really feel a certain type of way towards black people, but we will never know it because they will never say it, right? It's in the laws, it's in their behaviors, right? It's in what they're not saying. And so it's probably one of the craziest enemies, to be honest. It's like a serpent, you know what I mean? Truly, it's like a wolf in sheep clothing. Like you never really know, you know what I mean? And so you kind of can enter into certain spaces with this sense of naivete about you. But you'll never really know. And like I said, with the woman at my job, after she made that commentary, I just was like completely done. You know what I mean? I was like, I thought she would see my face and notice the discomfort that I felt with her saying stuff like that. But she didn't. But it's so funny. She came back and she tried to say, oh, you look nice today. She tried to talk to me and things like that. And that's the manipulation, right? That's the tactic. She really tried to play into this docile, blue-eyed, brown hair, womanly type of thing, but I just heard you talking about how you really felt about black people, black hood, black culture, and, black environments, because we know that black people are in the hood, right? That's not really anything that we have to sit here and discuss in 2023, So you want to just kind of be mindful when you're in these spaces. And, like I said, in regards to interracial dating, you want to be mindful. Because it's you want to be mindful. That's all I'm going to say. And, it's important to have that conversation too, because we're kind of in this world now where, like I said, white women are playing up and into that, right? There are a lot of people who are here for aesthetics. We just heard about the Blind Side star. Can't think of his name right now. I definitely should Google it. But since I'm getting ready to wrap up, because I don't want to go too far over, I'm going to pause and then I'll come back and I'll let you guys know his name. Okay, yes. So his name was Michael Oher. And I found this to be very interesting. So if you don't know, he was the Blind Side star. That was what the movie was based on. He was never actually adopted by the white family. They actually put up a conservatorship, which essentially means that they would have access to any of his money, but they would never actually have to adopt him. And this is what I talk about when I talk about white people and I talk about legalities and how I talk about, the dangers, is because their racism is no longer this lynch mob, right? It's no longer this overt thing. It's in the laws. It's in the ordinances. It's in the, the ways in which they go and parlay in these private communities and so forth. And so, I was just bringing it up to just say that was very crazy. And so it's important to read these type of stories. I think, letting people know that, like, you see them, just sending that out into the world, sending that light out, sending that love out to Michael. I definitely hope that the lawyers are able to get back his profits. You think about the NFL. I heavily critique the NFL, y'all know, but I be trying to stand clear because, like I said, there's so many black men in the NFL, so many people doing what they got to do for their families that, you got to respect the hustle. You got to respect the profession in terms of like talent and, overall, if I'm looking at the positives, what it provides for a lot of black males, growing up in certain communities and, having that way out, like, you want to kind of, just stay clear. But I can definitely see myself coming back a little bit, a little bit more hefty. A lot of articles, been there, done that, posted, deleted, you know what I mean? But I did get top writer in the Medium column. So I to this day, I still regret deleting that article because it was so profound and so insightful. But yeah, man, it's a very tough thing. And like I said, I think overall I would say this, it's important to have some type of recruiters, or not even recruiters, but more so, someone needs to come up with some type of program that young athletes can go through in terms of like that. But I don't know. It's a lot there. But anyway, yeah, man, a lot of times with these interracial kids and things like that, it's all a money tactic. It's all an aesthetic. It's all to be able to profit and play in black culture, but never really ever have to be concerned with black issues. I think about them, the Kardashians, and this is more so like we're going into pop culture, and I'm in here. We think about the Kardashians. You think about the black kids the kids that they have. Are those kids ever with their black family members? Do those kids ever hang around black people? I think with the one, I remember seeing the one with a black girl. I can't remember if it was Kylie Jenner who went to see Travis's family or whatever the case may be. And the little, she was with the black girl and the family or whatever. But it's like, you know, do these people even see them? You know what I mean? That's such a huge different, like, it's just a completely different lifestyle. You know what I mean? Completely different lifestyle. And there was a white girl, she does a podcast on TikTok. And I remember her interviewing with like some of the like top investors and asking them if they would, you know, sponsor her. She said it jokingly, but they were stingy. They were very stingy. Like, and I think that's the thing, right? That's how people stay rich. It's like they're very stingy. I listen to people who, you know, talk about, and this is another thing too. Like, y'all be surprised, man. I'm telling you. I'm about to do a review on Suits. I'm in here because honestly, I'm getting ready to get into some things, and we're going to talk about that later. So anyway, be blessed, be well, read your books, 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 read your books. You can read books about anything. Y'all know I'm not a fiction reader. I'll read a fiction book every now and then. That's not what I like to do in my leisure time. I read only for educational purposes. You don't have to go to college to be educated. And I'm going to touch on entrepreneurship too. Do I want to do it right here? Actually, no. I'm going to do it in a video that I'm going to make today. So I'm sending my love. I'm sending my light. I hope you guys are doing well. Peace.